Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Live at lunch.
You are looking live.
Live at lunch. Live at lunch with Ott and Hanny on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
What the hell's going on out here?
Now, here's Jimmy Ott and Charles Hannegriff.
For some reason or another, you sound a little taller on radio.
Is it live? Is it live? Is it live?
From the DraftKings Sportsbook at the Queen Casino downtown Baton Rouge, welcome to the Monday edition of Live at Lunch. I'm Charles Hannegriff. Jordan Kinch is back from his vacation, is in the studio. Max Gotro will join me a little bit later on here in the first hour of the show today. And Jimmy is not with us today. And we're doing a show today with a heavy heart. Yesterday, Jimmy's dad, Coach Al Ott, passed away at the age of 86. Coach Ott left a long legacy in New Orleans as a coach and as a teacher and as a friend to very, very many. And I was honored to count him among my friends in the short periods of time that I got to spend with him. Our extreme sympathies go out to Jimmy and Ethan and the entire Ott family on Coach's passing. He had been ill. He had had multiple hospital stays over the last couple of months, but he passed away peacefully yesterday at the age of 86. Al Ott was a member of the 1958 national championship team at LSU and also the 1959 team. He began a long coaching career in New Orleans back in the early 1970s. It started at De La Salle, continued on through O. Perry Walker, and eventually landed him at what was then Carr Junior High School, where the list of college players to come out of that program, which in 1992-93 would transition into a full-time high school, is very long. We think of Carr as one of the true powerhouse programs in this state, and their list of players and championships is very, very long. The people down in Algiers and a lot of his former players will tell you that a lot of the basis of the powerhouse that Carr became started with Al Ott. Among the many players that he coached that went on to college careers, probably one of, if not the best, was Patrick Surtain, who had a standout career at Southern Miss and then for 11 years in the NFL. LSU fans will remember Surtain as being on the Southern Miss team that played against LSU in 1994, which ended up being the end of the run for Curly Hallman. But Surtain was just one of many. At one point, Al Ott had 47 players on college scholarship. And when you think about the origins of a lot of those players and the opportunities that they got, it's a truly remarkable number. But it only tells part of the story with Al Ott. This past December, they put together a celebration of as many former players as they could get to come in. And some 3 decades after he had retired, the number of players that showed up to reminisce and to thank him was truly heartwarming. And I know it went a long way for Coach, and I know it went a long way for Jimmy. If your coaches and teachers come and go, and it's my experience that you forget way more than you remember. But if you remember what a coach did for you some 3 decades after he did it, or some 3 decades after he stopped doing it completely, and you've truly left a mark. And one of his players, Jeffrey Roach, posted this yesterday, and I know he won't mind me sharing it. Said Al Ott preached doing the little things right: resilience, dedication, and treating people like you expect to be treated. His dedication to us never wavered. Coach Ott preached the things that you expected from people, the way you expected to be treated. His dedication to us never wavered. He never had bad days or would tell us to go ask someone else. He showed up every day. And for those who didn't have the family life I was blessed with, he didn't see color. He only saw purple and gold at Carr. That wasn't a facade or a gimmick. That was Coach Ott. Thank you, Coach. I still have my Carr pride. For myself, my interactions with Coach were always lighthearted. We had a lot of fun when he would come to the show. I remember once we did a show at a golf tournament in New Orleans, and Coach came out to hang out and do the show with us. This is when Derek was still doing the show with us, and of course, the first thing we wanted to do was get some good stories on Jimmy. And Coach was happy to oblige because if you listen to this show, you know Jimmy's not shy about sharing his advice and his opinion with coaches. Well, turns out his father was no exception. So we had a great time hearing some of the stories of when Jimmy was growing up and some of Coach's early days at De La Salle and at Old Perry Walker and at Carr. And, you know, he was a terrific storyteller, whether it was talking about playing football at LSU and knowing guys like Billy Cannon and Johnny Robinson, all the way to when he became a coach. And again, Carr operated from the early 1960s into the early 1990s as a junior high school. But then when they went to full-time high school in 1992-93, the foundation had been set long before, and Al Ott deserves an enormous amount of credit for what Carr would become. And there's a great story about that Jimmy told from, I want to say this was about maybe 8 to 10 years ago, when Ethan was there's probably even less than that, because Ethan was in either junior high, just starting high school, so maybe 6 or 7 years ago would be a better time frame, where Jimmy and Ethan took Coach to the St. Aug Carr game, and Ethan was blown away at the treatment that Coach received, because he was like royalty down there. And he knew so many people on both sides, and so many of his former players that came up to talk to them, and they all knew him. He made a mark. He influenced so many lives, and when you do it for as long as he did, there's truly something special. And again, our deepest sympathies go out to the whole Ott family. Jimmy's going to be out, obviously, for a little bit, and we'll pick up the slack while he's gone. But we're going to miss Coach. God bless to Al Ott, who passed away yesterday at the age of 86. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and we'll start the rest of the show. We are here at the Queen, downtown Baton Rouge. Live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Ott and Hanny from the Queen Casino on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And a return here at the Queen. The DraftKings Sportsbook, fantastic place to come and watch games, to watch multiple games at one time. The screen here just simply cannot be beat. What we got on the big screen right now is Wimbledon. Jimmy will be happy to watch a little bit of Wimbledon when he gets back with us. They're up on the big screen today, starting in the first round today. We've also got a little NFL highlight stuff going on, and of course the NBA is dominating a lot of the conversation today with the beginning of free agency. We've seen a number of kind of re-signings go here in the last 24 to 48 hours, or at least the announcements of those things. James Harden going back with the Clippers, probably highlighting that. LeBron James opting back in with the Lakers. Jabari Smith, the former Auburn star, getting a 5-year extension with the Houston Rockets. The Portland Trailblazers have bought out DeAndre Ayton. They're going to move him. He'll be moving along to another team. And Colin Sexton was traded from Utah to Charlotte. But for us, we're obviously going to concentrate a little bit on the Pelicans here. And I don't know that it's going to be a huge active free agency period for New Orleans for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're not going to get there's not a lot of cap room to work with before you get to the next apron. And right now New Orleans has got a fairly full roster. I certainly expect some moves. But one of the moves that intrigues me the most is a move that was suggested by Rod Walker in his column in The Advocate yesterday, and one which is picking up a few whispers around the league, and that is, would the Pelicans bring back Chris Paul for one more ride? Now, ordinarily, I'm always about getting younger and looking towards the future, especially for a team that, in my opinion, has pretty flickering playoff aspirations next year, even if everything works out in what is a loaded Western Conference. But in this case, I think that this would be a fantastic idea for the Pelicans to bring Paul back if he is amenable. And here's the reasons why. Chris Paul just turned 40 years old. His best basketball.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Is obviously behind him, but some of that best basketball was played in New Orleans. He was the Rookie of the Year 20 years ago. He started in the 2005-2006 season, started that season in New Orleans, and was the Rookie of the Year. The second to last playoff series that the Pelicans won, which they've only won 2 since they've been here, was back in the 2007 season, which is the last time they won the division. And Paul was, that year, second in the voting for the MVP. In fact, he was a top 5 vote getter in the MVP voting twice while he was with New Orleans. He was in the top 10 another 7 times in his career after that. I don't think I got to spend a whole lot of time giving Chris Paul's resume. He's bounced around a lot as he's gotten later in his career. His best year in New Orleans was probably his best year in the NBA, although several of those Clippers years come really close. He had 5 straight years, where he was in the top 7 in the MVP voting. Then he moved on to Houston. We know that didn't work out. A brief step over in Oklahoma City, then 3 years with Phoenix. And last year, in what was a surprising move to me, he signed with the San Antonio Spurs. Now, Chris Paul has come really, really close to getting a ring. The closest was, that year they made the finals with Phoenix. Had he not been hurt in Game 7 of their Western Conference Finals when he was with the Rockets against Golden State, maybe that Rockets team would have won. The hamstring injury held him out of that. So I thought last year that Chris Paul might go ring chasing. Well, if you're going to go ring chasing, San Antonio was not the place to be last year. San Antonio had 2 precocious young players in Victor Wembanyama and Stephon Castle that Chris Paul wanted to play with and mentor. And that's where we're getting when we talk about what I think that Chris Paul could bring to New Orleans. The Pelicans just drafted what they think is going to be an elite point guard in Jeremiah Fears. And while Fears is about 4 inches taller, 3 or 4 inches taller than Paul, he is at this point a very young and a very slender point guard. He's listed at 182 pounds. I'm not sure if that's not just a little bit generous. Paul was probably better than anybody, with the exception of Allen Iverson. And you'd have to say Isaiah Thomas would go in that category too, as being smaller point guards that did 2 things. They absorbed a lot of punishment, but they also avoided a lot of punishment. And for an 18-year-old point guard at let's say 175 to 180 pounds, I think those would be some invaluable lessons. I think that Chris Paul would also go a long way in the locker room towards promoting a sense of professionalism. And with C.J. McCollum no longer in the fold, the Pelicans, who are a very, very young team, and in some cases you would say an immature team, certainly in the leadership, you would say that somebody like Chris Paul would work out fantastic. Could he come in and mentor Fears? I don't think that there's any question about that. Could he come in and make a difference with some of the older players on the team? Like, and when I say older players, I'm talking about guys in their mid-20s because that's where most of the vets for New Orleans are. Could he make a difference with Zion Williamson or Trey Murphy? I think that there's no question that he could. About a year ago, Chris Paul was doing an interview, and they asked him about his time back in New Orleans and the idea that he had forced his way out. Now, here's where things get a little bit muddy. It was an ugly time for the Hornets/Pelicans. They really didn't have an owner. The team was going to be kind of forced into moving him lest they be moved themselves, which was a real possibility for a while that the Hornets would pack up and move somewhere else. And then, after Katrina, they had spent their time in Oklahoma City. They had set the foundation for what would become the Thunder, that market could support professional basketball. Paul was in not the best situation. I never looked at it like he intentionally forced his way out because he was just unhappy in the city. Much more so that he was in a situation, sort of a rudderless ship with New Orleans. And during that interview a year ago, he talked about the affection that he had for New Orleans and that, there was still a big piece of him left in the city. I think he's still got some family there. So what better way, unless he wants to go, like I said, ring chasing. It's the only missing part of Chris Paul's resume is there's not a ring. Okay, look, the Karl Malones and Charles Barkley's. You can have a great NBA career. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think there's much question about that. And if you're not going to go ring chasing at this point, why not circle back around to a team that is in desperate need of some leadership and where you can really make an impact, not just with a player that plays a position you have, but with the rest of the locker room as well. I think Paul would come in at a reasonable price. Certainly the Pelicans don't have a ton of money to go off, on some, shopping spree in free agency. There's not that many players available anyway, and if there are some, if you're looking for a contending team, New Orleans ain't it right now. But this might just work, and so I'm hopeful. He might tell them no. There may be somewhere else that he wants to go for Chris Paul that it makes a lot more sense. But anyway, that was sort of my thoughts as the Pelicans get into the beginning of free agency here. That hey, maybe one more go with Chris Paul might just be the ticket here. Max, I got a lot to talk with you about. I know you had another show that you were doing, so you're coming in a little bit hot. How are you?
All right.
You spent some time down at the Manning camp, Manning Academy. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Big golf weekend, at a big playoff at the Rocket.
It was a fun playoff. I didn't honestly watch a whole lot of the tournament because it was a birdie fest, and it was kind of hard to follow the leaderboard. But yeah, golf's underway, I guess. It was a tournament, I guess.
Big MMA card as well. We're gonna get to with Troy Macker. But what do you think, Chris Paul? One more shot coming back to New Orleans.
I like the idea. I don't think it would happen, but Chris Paul. Look, I know more recent fans. If you're kind of young, you might view that Sun series when he came back, in the playoffs, and he was a bit of an agitator in that series. Got into it at times with Alvarado and maybe you were frustrated. It seemed like the fans were booing Chris Paul, if I remember right. I was in Game 4, I believe, in that series, and it kind of turned on him there. But, that happens in the playoffs. They're not going to, salute him, just because he played for the franchise when he started his career. But I absolutely agree with you on, mentoring Fears. I think that would be huge for him. Look, he averaged less than 10 points a game last year, so he's not going to be that productive for you, on the floor. But I think what he could bring for Fears is invaluable. And some of the things that frustrates you when you play against Chris Paul is the way he creates contact. I know you mentioned how, for his size, he can't create that much contact in terms of just getting hit all season long. He can't survive that, and Fears, certainly with his size, couldn't do that. But Paul is a little bit like SGA. They call him a foul merchant, right? But Chris Paul found a way to get other players into foul trouble and get to the free throw line. That's something that Paul was very good at. And for somebody who's of a similar size and is going to run the point at some point, I think a mentor like Chris Paul would be great for Jeremiah Fears.
Here's something else that I greatly value and a tremendous admirer of Chris Paul for doing this last year. He played 82 games. There's only like half a dozen guys in the league last year played 82 games.
At age
he played
39.
82 games at age 39, and he started all 82 games. I think bringing him in as a starter, and look, I'm not expecting MVP level Chris Paul anymore. That's not what this is about. It's about setting an example for those players, cough, cough, Mr. Williamson, who can't seem to do all the things necessary to keep themselves on the floor. McCollum tried to, teach him as best he could, and McCollum went to great lengths. He played through all kind of injuries. Maybe another voice would say, listen, you got to take your conditioning seriously. You got to take your sleep seriously. You got to take your schedule seriously. You got to take your diet seriously. All of these things, you will miss less games. This guy, Paul's among the smallest players in the league, got beat up and still manages to get out there for 82 games. I think he could not just mentor Fears, but I think he can mentor the other guys on how you go about being a pro. Might not work. McCollum didn't always get exactly what he wanted out of him, but I think that he could teach him about accountability a little bit, and I think that would be invaluable for New Orleans as well. If I'm Chris Paul, do I want to go back to New Orleans? I know that I'm not going to be on a championship team there. I know that there's no way that they're going to be a championship team. A great year next year for New Orleans would be if they make the play-in, much less the playoffs. But maybe he wants one more go at it somewhere where he could start. I would start him to take the pressure. I don't expect Fears to start anyway, but to take some of the pressure off of Jordan Poole, and maybe not make him as much ball handling, responsibilities right out of the chute. It's an idea. The Pels have got a little bit of money that they can work with here. Maybe Paul will be amenable to heading back. We're brought to you today by the Thibodeau Store. Cajun cooking, specially cookware shipped right to your doors, and a number of power tools that are on special right now. The DeWalt compact cordless chainsaws on the website right now. The cordless string trimmers, the hedge trimmers, the compact cordless pole saws as well. The brushless push cordless lawnmower kits are available right now. Plus patio furniture. The Outdoor Expressions sectionals are on special on the website right now. $150 off. If you're working in the yard, your spreaders and seeders, your potting soils, your weed control, countless power tools and hand tools that are available there at the Thibodeau Store. Online, it's thethibodeaustore.com, and we made it to where you can get the spelling a little bit wrong, and we're still going to get you there. 900 St. Patrick Highway in Thibodaux. And, of course, their sister property, the Pierre Part store down at Pierre Part for the past 114 years. Again, 900 St. Patrick Highway in Thibodaux, and online, thethibodeaustore.com. We'll take a break. Troy Macker with us when we return from the DraftKings Sportsbook at the Queen, live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jimmy, Charlie, and Troy. Three best buddies sitting around talking sports bets. Let's welcome in Troy Macker from Bet Rivers.
And we return here at the Queen Casino, downtown Baton Rouge. Charles Handegriff and Max Gotro. Bring in Troy Macker. Troy, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to be back. I was off the week for vacation. When you have two small kids, it's anything but a vacation. It's more like a business trip. I'm tired. My feet hurt, and I have sunburn everywhere. So I'm doing good.
At any point, did you say to your significant other, we need to go back so I can go back to work so I can get some rest?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually did 2 vacations in the span of 10 weeks. We had to drive from D.C. to South Carolina, and then South Carolina to Virginia, and then Virginia back to D.C. So there was a lot of packing and unpacking, and it was. I'm glad to be back.
A vacation with little kids sometimes requires a vacation from that. I'm going to be experiencing some of that next week, so we can maybe compare notes. Troy, the NBA free agency period, the draft is in the rearview mirror now. The free agency getting started today. We don't expect a bunch of major moves, but it feels like that in the last, let's say, 3 weeks, we've had several major injuries, to contending teams' best players. We've had the draft, and now we're going to have free agency. What has this done to the futures market for the NBA right now? Are we seeing any major swings or any major plays?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of odd changes or drastic ones. A little bit here or there. Maybe going down. Teams from maybe like plus 8,000 to plus 750, or plus 80 to 1 to 75 to 1, something like that. But there's nothing been drastic yet. I think you'll see when free agency ends that there will be that's when we'll probably make the most drastic changes because those are proven players that are being added or subtracted from teams. The draft doesn't really move a lot. Certainly the Mavericks did get a little bit better in terms of their odds, but that's because they already have quality players on the team because it was kind of a surprise for them to get the number 1 overall pick, and they got what we think to be a surefire future star in Cooper Flagg. But teams who are drafting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can tell you the Wizards odds didn't change. The 76ers odds didn't change. The Jazz odds didn't change. We saw a little bit of odds change for futures, when the 25-26 season odds came out, for the Pacers and the Bucks, the teams suffering big injuries. But I think the biggest change you'll see is when it's all over and or if not during free agency when big trades, big moves happen. If Giannis happens to go somewhere, things like that.
And more so from the overall winner. Because we Oklahoma City is the clear favorite there, but the Eastern Conference winner, you can make a case for Cleveland. You can make a case for the Knicks. Do you believe in the young Magic or the young Pistons enough? Does Boston have enough without Tatum? I mean, it's a real logjam. Or the Pacers, can they survive the loss of Halliburton? There's a real logjam, and you can make a case for even the Sixers. At the top of the Eastern Conference, I think you could probably talk yourself into as many as 4 or 5 teams right now.
Yeah, you can. And, I kind of hate the Magic odds to win the Eastern Conference because it's at plus 400, which I don't think there's any value there. I wish they were at 22 to 1 or something like that. But the teams sitting there at 10 to 1 or greater, Pistons, Pacers, Sixers, Hawks, Bucks, Heat, none of those really give me a great confidence. Maybe the Pistons, just because we saw them grow a lot last year, and they certainly have some burgeoning star talent. I do think the Magic could be very, very good this year. I just don't like their odds because they are relatively unproven. And those very short odds on Cleveland and New York. And, I believe Cleveland got rid of someone just recently, and the Knicks don't have a head coach unless they hired someone when I was on vacation, and I would have heard about it. So
no.
I think the Eastern Conference is up for grabs.
They'll continue to interview. I think that they were looking for a coach somewhere in the Russian league at some point last week. Is it worse from a handle standpoint to have this many teams this jumbled up? I can actually make a better case as a bettor that in the Western Conference, because I can either back the favorite at OKC, where I've got a clear favorite, or if I want a price, I could talk myself into the Rockets or the Nuggets or the T-Wolves at a much, much better second, third, fourth price than I can in the East. So is it actually worse for the handle when you've got this many teams that are this close to the top?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, I mean, teams like, the Cavaliers up until 3 years ago were not very good. The Magic have not been very good. The Pistons have not been very good. The Hawks have not been very good, for a while. And they're all, pretty short prices, whereas you look at teams in the Western Conference, and the Rockets are the second shortest odds at plus 500. The Magic are the third shortest odds in the East, and they're plus 400. The Rockets have been better than the Magic. The Nuggets at plus 800 have been better. And, yes, the Western Conference we know is far superior, but there's, the Timberwolves at plus 800. I could see them, making a Western Conference final. Certainly they got to win the series to cash, but, you can cash out. Even the Spurs at plus 1,300. I like that far more than any team. Even the Bucks at 2,200. Say they get Giannis back, I would still like the Spurs just because I think there's far better talent in the West. And, yes, it's more difficult, but I could just see those teams winning series against other good teams, as I have no confidence in the Magic or the Pistons or even the Pacers without Halliburton. Certainly he will come back at some point, but I wholeheartedly agree that there's much better value. It's much easier to bet on the West, and I think you'll see, a big disparity between tickets and money on the Western Conference winner versus Eastern Conference winner, even though Bet Rivers has a lot of our markets, east of the Mississippi River.
Troy, I guess the books did pretty well on UFC 317 with the Ilia Topuria round one knockout. Just an amazing performance against a fan favorite in Charles Oliveira. And then Alexander Pantoja also, a favorite in his own right of about minus 280 or so, winning by submission in a dominant performance against Kai Kara-France. So how did the books do on UFC 317 this weekend? And what's your take on those two divisions, the flyweight and the lightweight division, that just look like they're going to be dominated by these two going forward?
Yeah, we actually lost money. Not a lot,
really?
But we were down five figures, so under $100,000. But we took a lot of a big money bet on some heavy favorites, some heavy in fight favorites, which is really tricky to bet on because the live lines just aren't available that often. You really have to be on top of things. But so right now, Pantoja to win outright was the 5th most wagered on play of the weekend. Topuria to win was the 10th most wagered on play of the weekend, and Topuria versus Oliveira was the 7th most wagered on event of the weekend. And, I think because Oliveira has been around for so long, he obviously was the champion. He has, world-class jiu-jitsu skills. Even though Topuria is the real deal, we had enough people betting on Oliveira to pull off an upset to kind of even it out. I think the lightweight division is Topuria's for a long time. Now, in this sport, anything can happen, and even at the lightweight division, there are guys with hands, and there are guys with really good submissions that could, catch you. But Topuria has starched everyone he's faced. He's super young. He's now won a belt at 2 different weight classes. I think there are some guys out there who could contend with him, but I wouldn't be keen to bet on him to lose anytime soon, just because he is a bigger lightweight, despite the fact that he had been fighting at a lower weight class. And, not a lot of people know about Pantoja, but this guy has been cleaning house, recently, and he's going to be a very short money favorite in his next title fight.
Coming off of that, less than 3 weeks away from UFC 318, coming here to New Orleans, Max Holloway going against Dustin Poirier, likely his retirement fight for the BMF title. For those of us who maybe were just watching this weekend, or some of our audience who's maybe never been to a UFC event, maybe thinking about going, can you describe what it's like to be at I've only been to one pay-per-view, and it's a true must-see sort of bucket list event to me, with how the audience is just on the edge of their seat in some of these fights. But can you describe just what a UFC fight could bring for maybe those people who are interested in going?
Yeah, so, it is tricky because there have been so many cards overseas, especially in the Middle East, and the reception is entirely different. How fans treat sporting events is entirely different. If you're at a true numbered pay-per-view in the States, it is raucous, it is wild. And I think specifically for this card, because you have Max Holloway coming off one of the greatest finishes in UFC history, and Dustin Poirier in his home state, in his final fight, this is going to be a banger. The reception for him coming out to his final fight is going to be something we've probably only heard a few times. George St. Pierre in Montreal, Robbie Lawler in his retirement fight. He came out to the last Mohicans, and he was such a well-respected fighter who went out on his shield every fight. Poirier has that reputation as well. It is, I've had the chance to go cover a Conor McGregor fight in Vegas and a Ronda Rousey fight in Vegas at the peak of their superstardom, and it's up there with any sporting event I've ever covered. And it's wild all weekend. You get a lot of international flair. I'm not sure what that will be like in New Orleans, but I'm very much looking forward to this. I have no idea how it's going to play out, but I would take this fight not to go to the.
The rest of the card's a little underwhelming, but I don't think it'll matter because everyone's going to be there for that.
I have heard that this is a pricey ticket, a very elusive ticket.
Last I looked, about $400 just to get in the doors.
Yeah,
and then if you want a reasonably close seat, it gets into the four number range.
I would imagine that's only going to go up between now and the time that it starts. Quick update here from Wimbledon. Two-time defending champion Carlos Alcaraz, number 2 seed, is in a 5th set with Fabio Fognini. That's right. That is a fabulous name, Fabio Fognini. I have no idea what his odds were, but
I believe 15-1 at Bet Rivers.
Just 15-1. He's unseeded. Now Alcaraz just broke him.
20,000 bet on Alcaraz to win this match outright, a pre-match, and I believe it was like minus 5,000.
Well, Alcaraz just broke him to go up 2-0, but Fognini had him 40-15 to hold serve to get it to 1-1, and then Alcaraz came back and won 4 straight points and broke him. So he's up 2-0 in the 5th set, but I'm sure whoever it is got that big bet on Alcaraz.
That's a sweat.
Yeah, he's not having the best. What kind of handling you guys do on Wimbledon? Just out of curiosity.
Matches we do very well, and as the tournament progresses, if you get the high-profile matchups in the quarters, semis, and finals, they do exceptionally well. But especially in the early rounds, because it is at a good time of the day for especially East and Central time bettors in America, we do very well on betting. Futures, not so much. It's really hard to find a time to bet on the futures because the matches can start so early, especially in the first couple rounds. So, our futures odds are down right now to win the tournament. Now we do have quarter, winners up. But in terms of matches, we do, a lot of handle. But a lot of it, I would say probably 70%, if not more of it, is all in-game match betting, which is usually for like an NFL game, it's around 40%.
Fognini has more winners in this match than Alcaraz does.
Fognini's a pretty good player. I know he's not ranked in this, but that's a tough draw, I guess, for Alcaraz in the first round.
Well,
I agree.
Little opening here as he was up 30 love trying to break back.
We already saw Daniil Medvedev get upset today. He was about minus 1,200, so we've already seen a big upset there at Wimbledon.
Max, I love that you get up early to get the Wimbledon stuff going for us. We appreciate that. Troy, let me ask you about Major League Baseball for a second here. The Miami Marlins on a 7-game winning streak. Now they're still helling back out of first place, but any support for the Fish during this streak?
I mean, we've seen an increase in people betting on the Marlins to win, but that increase is basically, over this 7-game span, gone from, I think the first game they were backed by about 23% of the money to 4 games later they were backed by 43% of the money to win. I think that was their third game against the Diamondbacks maybe, so or first game against the Diamondbacks. So there's certainly been people are getting on them more than they had, but we still have yet to take more than 50% of the money on the Marlins to win a game. And, it really does take about 8 to 10 games if it's a bad team winning. If it's a bad team who's just losing and losing and losing, as we saw with the Nationals 2 or 3 weeks ago, that is people dump on that. But, same with the Mets on their losing streak. We didn't see people come off the Mets all that strong. Maybe a little bit of a dip, but because the Marlins are a team that people don't consistently back, it is hard for them to get on the bandwagon, even with live betting be pretty popular with the MLB.
Those teams, Colorado is one of the worst teams ever. Pittsburgh had gotten on a run there where they had won 13 out of 21, which for the Pirates that's really good, and they're still 10 games out of 4th place, not out of first place. They're out of 4th place. I mean, some of these teams are trying to start from Siberia, basically. All right, Troy. What the last thing? I'm only going to ask this for other people because I won't watch this thing. But the hot dogs on the 4th of July. I hear chestnuts coming back this year. You guys got anything on the hot dogs on Friday?
Limited options and limited markets. Yeah, I can tell you that I haven't checked in a few days, but once the announcement happened that Chestnut was coming back, I believe he was like minus 3,200 or something like that. I imagine when it goes off, he'll be around minus 5,000. Not a lot of value there, but I'm sure we will take one or two bets of over 10,000 on that to try to turn it around. Even though he did not compete last year, he's the greatest competitive eater in history, which is a funny phrase to say. But we don't take a ton of action just because the markets are limited, but because, it is a competition. It not being of the sport matter, there has been some chicanery in the past as it relates to, number of dogs completed, whether, a full bun goes down or not. So we don't take a ton. I'm sure we'll take more than on who will win the next pope, but or who will become the next pope. But I imagine if we were to take a lot of action, it's going to be in the day preceding July 4th.
For what it's worth, I have bet on the hot dog eating contest here in Louisiana. So sometimes our gaming commission, not the best in terms of, making everything available, but I do think it'll be available in our markets, if I had to guess.
If they wanted to take that one off the board, I could stand to miss that one. I can't watch it, man.
Oh.
I just can't watch it.
I'll tell you this, that having Chestnut back in it will make a big difference in the betting market. I think, I can't remember last year, but I have to imagine it was probably our lowest in terms of handle and tickets, because people weren't as interested, and it's not like a sport where, like, if the Chiefs were not to make the playoffs, people would have more value because they know all the other teams and there's better odds. No one knows anyone else other than Joey Chestnut. So having him in will just bring in people to bet, even if it is at Chestnut at super short up.
Follow Troy on X, MACHIR. Troy, enjoy the holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You guys do the same. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We're brought to you by Louisiana Health and Injury Centers, helping you deal with pain. Dr. Michael Goff and his staff have done a fantastic job for our family. So if you've got things that are keeping you from moving around as well as you'd like, maybe it's an old injury from an accident or from a sports-related injury that's giving you problems, or maybe just as you get a little bit older, things start to hurt more. Let them do for you what they've done for us, which is get you into a program that's going to target those problem areas and get you to feeling better, whether it be something as simple as an exercise and stretching program, a small adjustment, or if you do need dry needling, electric nerve stimulation, cryo, or ultrasound therapy. Airline Highway, Plank Road, Jefferson Highway, near Drusilla. Dr. Michael Goff, Louisiana Health and Injury Centers. Live at the Queen, live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Ott and Hanny from the Queen Casino on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Crisis averted at Wimbledon, at least for now. Alcaraz up 3-0 in the fifth set. Pete Nakos from On3 reporting that Ashton Larson, LSU outfielder, has put himself in the transfer portal. Last year, Larson hit .256 for LSU in 34 games. He started 5. 2 homers, 12 runs batted in. The most memorable, of course, was the home run he hit as a pinch hitter against Alabama, which a game that LSU went on to win that they were trailing. This is not a huge surprise. It's a pretty crowded outfield. Larson was a really highly rated player coming out of high school. It just the playing time was never there for him. And when you look to next year, where you expect Derek Curiel to be obviously entrenched at one of these outfield spots, probably in center, and Brown at one of these spots, probably in right. And you have a decision to make for both Ethan Fry and Chris Stanfield, and I'm told there's a decent chance that Fry is going to be back, or at least they think they've got a chance to get Fry back. It's a crowded outfield, and so with all those guys having played significantly more than him, I'm disappointed that it didn't work out for him here. But I certainly understand there's sometimes where the transfer portal is your best shot. So best of luck to Ashton Larson. He is in the transfer portal heading out. Hour number 2 straight ahead here at the Queen, live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Ott and Hanny from the Queen Casino on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And we return here at the Queen. Charles Hendrick along with Max Gotro. Jordan Kinch is back in the studio. We are here at the Queen watching. There's been this lengthy delay. I'm not really sure what's going on there at Wimbledon, but something's up. They've stopped play with Alcaraz up 3-0 in the fifth set. But a great place to come out here and watch all of the games. Major League Baseball. They're going to divide this up. You're going to have every game on. Obviously for college football season, college basketball season. Great place to watch here at the Queen. You know, if you can stand up to Jimmy Ott scrutiny when you're putting on the TVs, you're going to get every game. So it's a great place to come out and watch. Terrific food right across the hall. And a full-service bar here right in the sports book. You come on out here at the Queen Baton Rouge DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, Super Scout, Max Gotro, we sent you down to the Manning Passing Academy. I understand you and Jordan were raising hell at one of the after spots, but we'll leave those stories for after the show. But tell me what you saw. Some of the reports that came out. We saw that Arch Manning was rooming with Garrett Nussmeier, and Nussmeier won at least one of the competitions that was publicized. And a professional quarterback, and this is rare for the Manning Passing Academy, a current professional quarterback was there.
Tyler Shuck
was there working out with the guys. So let's start with Nussmeier and what you saw with him.
Yeah, Nuss, there's a few competitions that they run. It's a bit of a showcase for the fans there in Thibodaux, and Nussmeier was one that really stood out as just, he's going to be the fan favorite. He gets a cheer every time he goes up there, but
that's LSU country.
He looked very composed and more like he had a bit of a swagger to him. Like you could tell he was very comfortable. He was kind of joking around. He was very expressive with everything he did. Looked very smooth going through all the drills. Had a really good deep ball, which I've seen in the past. The deep ball, it's a point of contention for me because I feel like a lot of people give him a little bit too much credit for his deep ball, at least what we've seen on the field.
It drifts a little bit on him from time to time.
It does drift a little bit. It looked very, very nice this year as opposed to last year where I did see visually on some of these routes that they had, they've got Nichols receivers who they've never really played with before, so you can't take too much away from it. The ball's still on a tight spiral at the end of the deep ball, which some of these guys it starts to lose its its control and whatnot. If you have a weaker arm strength, but he's got the arm strength, but the deep ball accuracy wasn't always the best, and it looked very, very solid this time around. He won the Raising Cane's competition where they're throwing from about 30 yards out to a basketball hoop, which I believe he won that as well last year. I'm sure there's a little bit of luck involved with that. They're just kind of chucking it up there. But, it was noteworthy, I guess. And went through the drills very, very solidly. So I really liked I would just say the swagger is what kind of stood out to me. He looked very comfortable with where he was.
Comfortable is a good word. That's what he's supposed to be right now. You think about Garrett Nussmeier's career at LSU. When he came in, there was no guarantee that he was ever going to be the starting quarterback. Okay, you think about when he came in and Walker Howard came in right behind him, and Howard was a 5-star guy, and they said, well, Howard's going to be the guy. I even thought that for a while. So you fought that off, and then you go through the time where Jaden Daniels Jaden Daniels going to come back for his final year. Yes, he did. Last year, you're going to come back. You're going to be your first time starter. We don't really know. Now you're coming back. You're a senior. You have continuity in the coaching staff. You have all of the familiarity with everything associated with the program. You know the expectations. You've now got 14 starts, 15 starts under his belt. Okay, so he's supposed to be comfortable. That's what they're banking on. That's one of the things that's got me so high on this LSU season. And not for nothing, but with the amount of money they spent in the transfer portal, would they have done all that with a first-time starting quarterback? I don't know. Maybe not. But Garrett Nussmeier, to me, was the key. When he said, I'm coming back, that unlocked every possibility for LSU in 2025 and erased a lot of question marks. That's what I want him to be. I like the idea that he roomed with Manning. It's kind of a brain-picking operation for both of them, I'm sure. I'm fine with all that. That's what I expected out of Garrett Nussmeier. I expect him to run the rest of LSU's summer workouts the way good leaders do. and we talk about this a ton. Richard Dixon does a post game with me. It's very, very big on this. And look, when your quarterback runs your off-season workouts and everybody shows up and everybody's on time and everybody's working hard, you're gonna have a good year. I've got no doubt that Nussmeier is gonna do that.
The one other thing I would note on him, you get to talk to some of these guys. I wasn't there for the press availabilities or anything, but he mentioned that this is the most talented team that he's been on. That's obvious. I don't think you got any news out of that, but it was interesting to hear him talk about how he's trying to, bolster up his lower body a little bit so he can run and take some more hits. I didn't notice that, visually, physically, but he at least is aware, very aware, that he probably needs to run at least some. When they give it to him, when the defense is just give him 10 yards, he can at least take that slide and move the chains. And that's at least something that he's aware, and he's worked this offseason to prepare his body for that.
He's always been a good enough athlete to do that. I think it's been more mental, and
sure.
So I'm fine with that. Now these comments are in the summertime, okay? There's no pressure, and I get everybody's optimistic and everybody's in first place. You want to, and when Burrow said this years ago, we're going to average 50 points a game. Everybody laughed at him, okay? I'm sorry. Everybody,
sure.
Yeah, okay, whatever. But they damn near did. Break down when he says this is the most talented team I've been on. Think about that for a second, okay? 2 years ago, and I know he wasn't the starting quarterback, your top two receivers both went in the first round of the NFL draft, and not only did they do that, they went on to have great rookie seasons. Your left tackle last year went in the top 5 picks, the highest any LSU offensive lineman has ever gone. So when you say this is the most talented team I've been on, it's either hyperbole or get ready for what's going to be a really good – I mean, Emory Jones over on the right side was, a drafted offensive tackle. Mason Taylor is leaving here as the all-time leader in receptions for a tight end. He's saying, again, take him at his word, I got better talent than that. Pardon, that's a mouthful, okay? These guys are either already in the NFL that you've been playing with the last 2 years, or they're on their way and they were drafted really, really high. If he's right, that's really good.
They're not returning a whole lot in terms of what they had. Returning starters. There's a lot coming in, from outside, from the portal. So, to say that, they know the pressure's on. Brian Kelly hasn't run from it either. So they know the expectations this year, but they feel like they have those expectations as well.
Well, I got no problem with him saying that, okay? And is it overestimating his own teammates? Maybe. But if he's even close to right, I mean, I could name you a bunch of other guys that were on the last two teams that are, making money playing football at the professional level or soon will be. All right, Kate Klubnik, we're going to see this cat pretty soon. He was down there. Most recent ESPN mock draft, because, it's never not mock draft season, has him as the number one player for next year in the draft, 10 months out. What did you think?
Effortless, just kind of, really liked his throwing motion. There was not a whole lot of, effort into the deep throws, which you see on some of the back end of these even Power 4 quarterbacks where they got to kind of step into it. It just looks very easy for him. And look, Clemson returned 16 starters this year. They've got 8 on the offense. They are a familiar team, so he is going to be a little bit more comfortable. There are a lot of returning starters at quarterback this year, but he's got a whole team around him. And I just nothing exceptional in terms of like one particular area to me, but I was just impressed just looking at his throwing motion, watching him throw the ball. It just seemed effortless. That was my one note that I took down. It was just very, very smooth, very rhythmic in what he does, and I see why some NFL scouts are really paying attention to him.
Somebody else that should be extremely comfortable with where he is, given his timeline and how he had to progress up and was put in, and then had to take his lumps. By the way, in that mock draft, Nussmeier number 11 in that mock. Lenore Sellers, I think, is one of the more intriguing prospects for this year, because I can if Lenore Sellers takes the next step and everything else catches up with the physical ability, I thought he was getting better last year. If that all comes to fruition, South Carolina's going to be a real factor.
Yeah, it was interesting. Showcases like this, and they did change up one of the showcases. They used to have these little golf carts that would run these, crossers and then one down the field. It never really timed.
With the little targets on them?
Yeah, it never really worked. So they actually had, physical, cardboard cutouts basically in different spots, and I thought it worked out better. But it was a different way of doing things this year. And it used to be this the one cart that would go, straight to the back of the end zone. It would always go early, and so you really just get to see them throw it as far as they can, pretty much. And someone like Joe Milton has always impressed in that sort of format because he could throw without really any crow hop, 3-step drop and just chuck it, and it would stand out. Like his ball looked way different. Lenora Sellers, if that was still the case at the Manning Passing Academy, would have been one of those standouts because what we did see him do, he makes everything look so easy. He's comfortable. He's got every throw in the bag. The question, and we didn't see him run much, which is certainly a big factor in his arsenal, but you could see a little inaccuracies. There's just certain things. I wanted it to be really, really smooth and really comfortable for him, and there were some inaccuracies, especially on just the little short, easy routes. And I think that's going to be the question with him. He has some weird inaccuracies, and I think some of it's decision making in terms of which throws he chooses to make at times. That was kind of what we asked last year. Remember, I mean, he hasn't played that much, it feels like. He played a lot last year, but it seems like he's going to have to work through some things, and I think it's a work in progress. The full potential is there. His ceiling is the sky's the limit for him, but there were some inaccuracies and just maybe some technique things that he could clean up to maybe fix those things, but he's got such an arm that stands out for sure.
He needs to pitch. Okay, I'm still in baseball mode. He needs to pitch. He needs to pile up some innings. I love his game. When I look at him, I see the freshman version of Cam Newton. Not the third-year guy yet, not the guy that was the MVP of the league, but I see a lot of the same physical traits that Cam Newton had when he started at Florida, and couldn't get on the field right there at the beginning. Then he went to the junior college and ran off the field stuff. And he got when he got to Auburn, well, he was a monster. One of the best seasons we've ever seen. Sellers can be that. He's not that right now, but he can be that. He reminds me an awful lot of a young Cam Newton. Let me finish up this segment because we're going to do one more of this because there's plenty more. Max Wynn, he has got a notebook full of stuff, man, from the Manning Passing Academy. Drew Allard was there. He's the fourth of the first-round picks that was there.
I have nothing on him. I don't think he participated in the competition.
Okay.
We've seen quarterbacks before that are counselors that don't participate in the competition for whatever reason. He might have been there in Thibodeau, but I did not see him. At least didn't notice him there.
I'm just going down my list. It's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to see him. I actually had written down. I wanted to see what he was going to do, but I didn't get anything from him. I will say just one thing. Just since we were supposed to go there, Oklahoma, John Mateer. I was really curious. He was probably my most intriguing player going in. That I wanted to see him going from Washington State. We already knew he kind of had a weird throwing motion, but man, it is very interesting. It was the most standout throwing motion I saw. He kind of sidearms it. He's very compact, but he's big enough to survive SEC hits. I saw him in person. He runs a lot. He's probably a 4.5, 4.55 type of player, but he can sustain that. He's going to run a little bit. This offense for Oklahoma will be interesting. They have a tough schedule, as we've noted. Last year as well. Texas gets the easy one, Oklahoma not so much. But just the way he throws it was good. He got it on target. It was effective, but it's very interesting how he throws it. Just sidearms it, but it's very close to his body. It's just a different arm angle, different arm slot than you see everyone else throw at.
Does it lend itself to getting balls knocked down? I mean, that's the first thing I think of when I hear sidearm.
Could see that. See that for sure. Arm side pressure could affect him a little bit differently than other players.
I got like a 4-game range on Oklahoma. I mean, literally from 6 to 10 wins, and a lot of it depends on him.
What's their defense going to look like? Well, I mean, they've got a defensive head coach, but it hasn't always been great, and they lost some pieces. They lost they lost the linebacker that's with New Orleans now.
Yeah, I believe that I trust Venables a little bit more to fix things on that side of the ball. I don't know what Mateer is going to look like in this offense, so I'm just as curious as you are. We are brought to you by Coastal Capital Advisors. Phil Fontenot and his staff done a terrific job for our family. When it comes to retirement, you want some security. You want the knowledge that solid professionals are taking care of you so that at the different portions of your life, as your income changes, as your age a little bit, you want to know that you're on track so when that day comes for you to retire, you're going to have all of your goals achieved. Coastal Capital Advisors will work with you. They've worked with me. They'll work with your business partners. They'll work with tax professionals to make sure that all of your goals are intact. Call 337-981-1376. Online, it's coastalcapitaladv.com. Coastalcapitaladv.com. Advisory services provided by New Age Advisors. Member FINRA, SIPC. Looks like Alcaraz is going to get home 5-1 now, in the last set. Going to survive the upset bid by Fabio Fognini.
Oh, no, Fabio.
Fabio Fognini. Live at the Queen. Live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Live at lunch with Otten Hanny from the Queen Casino on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And return here at the Queen. Alcaraz gets through in the fifth set, 6-1. It was a medical emergency in the crowd that delayed this match in the fifth set for a little over 15 minutes. Somebody collided very hot today at Wimbledon, so that's what caused the delay. And then Alcaraz gets home 6-1 in the fifth set. Max was down at the Manning camp with more out of his overflowing notebook. Tell me about Ty Simpson, the heir apparent at Alabama.
Bad news. He looked very composed.
Great.
He looked very, very sharp. I liked the way he looked. Well, I didn't really like it, but he did look good. I was a little curious to see what he looked like, and he looked the part. That's kind of what I noted there. He's not the biggest guy. I think he's listed as 6'2". I think that's probably maybe just slightly on the high end. I'd probably have him 6'1.5", something like that. But
I'm looking at one. A roster's had him at 6'1" when he signed.
Okay,
but now that was 3 years ago. He's a redshirt junior, so
not the biggest guy.
Okay.
I wouldn't call him lanky, but he's probably not got the most weight. He probably could add a couple pounds. But yeah, he looked solid. He looked like a Bama quarterback should. I would say, and that's unfortunate.
Great. There was plenty of other SEC quarterbacks besides the ones we've already talked about. Who caught your attention?
Yeah, Austin Simmons, going to be probably the starter for Ole Miss, the lefty. He has a baseball background. You could kind of see that. It was a very comfortable motion for a lefty. Sometimes lefties, when you kind of scout them and you watch them, they look different just because they're left-handed. They're coming from the other side. But he looked good for what's going to be, I believe, a redshirt freshman next year. But he was on the baseball team, I remember, last year. And Austin Simmons, a lot of zip on the ball for him. So curious to see what he ends up doing in a Lane Kiffin offense. But I expect him to be the starter, and he looked very good, I thought, the lefty yesterday. Also, Missouri, if you remember.
Can I say something about him first? In that game against Georgia last year, he went in very early for an injured Jackson Dart, and when Dart went out of that game, it was no guarantee he was coming back. Now, he did, and Ole Miss ended up really spanking Georgia pretty good that day. But the drive that Simmons put together was fantastic because it was very early in the game. Georgia had gone down. The game had started out terrible for Ole Miss. Dart had thrown an interception on the very first series, and Georgia took a short field, punched it in on fourth down for a touchdown, and 4 minutes into the game, Dart's out. Georgia leads 7-0, and this kid's got to come in the game. And you could imagine the pressure on him. I mean, this is a huge, huge game. And your starting quarterback has gone to the locker room. Georgia punches in for an early lead. And Simmons looked fantastic on that drive. I mean, he took Ole Miss right down the field, 75 yards in however many plays it was. to tie the score to the point where Jimmy and I were just like, are they going to put Dart back in the game? Because that looked great. Not only had Dart thrown the interception, but he had gotten crushed as well. So that kid, I know it was one drive, but it was against Georgia, and it was in a tight spot, and he looked great. So,
look, they lost a lot, Ole Miss. They're going to look different, but you're replacing a Jackson Dart can't be easy. I would say Simmons. He looked good. So I would watch out for him a little bit, and maybe this offense won't take that much of a step back.
Okay.
Missouri has got Bo Pribula, who's going to be their starter more than likely this year. He comes from Penn State. He got some playing time when Drew Aller was hurt and looked pretty good, but they went back to Aller and Pribula transferred out. I will say Pribula looked good. He didn't stand out to me as like one of the better performers of the Manning Passing Academy Showcase, but he looked like he could be better than Brady Cook. I've seen Brady Cook at this event before. He was not the most impressive player to me. Cook was gritty. He could run a little bit when they needed to. There were some close games. I think of one against Arkansas where he did a lot with his feet. He had Luther Burden, who did a lot, after the catch for them as well. So no disrespect to Brady Cook, but I think Pribula could be better for Missouri, and so that was interesting to see.
His claim to fame was he was in the transfer portal while they were still playing because it was, okay, what happens if something happens to the quarterback? Well, we're going to go without our number one backup, and he had played some significant snaps for them.
Taylon Green out of Arkansas, we've seen him here in Tiger Stadium last year, so nothing really notable there. He does have a bit of a longer motion. I did notice that, but the deep ball's fine, and he's a fine player. I wouldn't say nothing more than that. But
there was always the word I always used with him was scary, because he could be scary good for short periods of time. He could never completely sustain it, but there were times where for 2 or 3 drives, like, wow, look at that. And especially with his ability to extend plays, and he's got plenty of arm. I think it was the bowl game. He went nuts. But there were also times where he would miss badly. So he was a big boom-bust player. And I think you saw it in the game. Who were they playing? Oklahoma State, I think it was. And he got off to a great start. And then all of a sudden, threw an interception, and after that, it was all Oklahoma State. Am I thinking about the right game there?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
So he's a big, high risk, high reward type of quarterback. You're missing somebody.
Who am I missing? There's a couple that I.
Well, Texas is in the SEC now, so we should probably talk about him.
Let's talk about Arch. Yeah, Arch looked very solid.
I'm not going to make a mean face at you like somebody when you talk about Arch Manning.
Sure, he looked like a guy who's seen this sort of thing happen. Like maybe the Manning Passing Academy. He kind of knew what drills were coming, and he's seen it before. As I remember, I think he was there last year, but I don't remember him throwing. I don't remember seeing him.
Hasn't he been going to this thing since he was like 5?
Right. So I was curious. I was like, he is going to throw, right? Because he might have thrown last year, but I don't really remember it. He looked very good. He looked like what he's kind of been made out to be. I don't want to say he's going to be this next level NFL guy, and maybe we'll see him for 2 years at Texas, but I would presume. But yeah, I would say Arch looked very good. Very good.
The mock draft I was referencing earlier did not have Arch Manning in it for specifically that reason, that they believe also that he will be the starting quarterback at Texas for 2 years. And there's no reason not to believe that. If it was, a lot of other players that say, no, they just take the money and go. Eli stayed 4, Peyton stayed 4. The Mannings are very well aware of the success rate after a certain number of starts, and he's not going to get to that number this year, 20 to 25 starts this year. I fully expect him back in 26 as well. So
I've already heard Albert Breer sort of talk about the possibility. What if the Saints had the number 1 pick? Would that change things? I guess Jimmy would probably say no. The Saints would not make them change their mind there. But that certainly would be a narrative if New Orleans starts to struggle, especially they've got a tough sort of schedule to open the season. Yeah. If they struggle, that volume on that discussion is only going to get louder.
I don't think it would change their minds as far as him coming out. I think he's there for 2 years, no matter who's got the number 1 pick. I can't rule out that if the year he comes out, New Orleans has got the number 1 pick, that they steer him around that. I mean, after what happened with Eli, I can't rule that out. After what happened with Peyton, Peyton didn't go to Ole Miss. If Cooper had been healthy, would Peyton have gone to Ole Miss? Well, he says yes. I take him at his word. But I was there for the recruitment of Peyton Manning. Watched it, from a very up close, and it was pretty obvious that by that time it was like, man, you go to Ole Miss and this is going to be all you do all day, every day is talk about your dad. Go someplace else, and he did. And then by the time Eli came along, it had kind of smoothed itself out. And I could honestly see if when that year comes, if the Saints are in position to take him, that they're like, you know what, this is not what's best. And they decided that it wasn't best for Eli to play in San Diego, and they moved it around. That's a long way in the future, but I can't rule it out because of past history. And I also can't tell you that it might not be what's best for the quarterback. It's a hell of a thing to go play quarterback with that name in that city. That it's hard enough without adding any undue pressure for him. So I could understand that. But it's the other Saints quarterback that I want to talk about in Tyler Shook that was there, because pros going to this thing is not.
I don't think it's ever happened
outside of the Mannings themselves. So they're on their off time. He could be 1, 2, 3 Cancun.
Yeah, most of these guys are resting or training in some type of way.
And he's out there working this. What was he doing out there?
He was just counseling. He was a camp counselor. They train a lot of these campers who are high school, middle schoolers. I'm not entirely sure what they're doing. That they're running different offenses. They're going through play calls. We saw a little bit of video of Nussmeier doing it. I haven't actually seen that in action before. He didn't participate in any of the throwing competitions or anything like that. But just the fact of being there, NFL guys don't do it once they go there. The MPA, they like to focus on all their guys when they get drafted. This guy was an alumnus of the MPA as a counselor and whatnot, but they haven't had one, as far as I'm aware, that's been from the NFL, and the Mannings were very complimentary. Arch, pointed it out. I saw Peyton was on with Pat McAfee earlier and complimented him for that and gave some good advice. So it was interesting to see him there, and it's something that you wouldn't expect, but it just goes to show you how he's done. He's basically taken every bit of what he understands Derek Carr was and was thought of here in New Orleans, and is doing the opposite. He is going out of his way to make himself a fan favorite and make fans appreciate what he's doing here in the community. He's going on with the St. Brown receivers. They have a podcast together. They were trashing New Orleans food, saying it's overrated. He said maybe that's why you're not here anymore.
Amon-Ra wasn't.
Equanimous was there.
Equanimous.
And he said, yeah.
I would have mispronounced that.
That's probably why you're not on the team anymore. So he's saying all the right things in New Orleans, which is a step in the right direction.
At the risk of sounding overly optimistic, he is doing. Okay, when you show up at Tulane and with your receivers right after the draft, that's something. He didn't have to go to this. Like I said, he signed his contract. He could have taken he's married, right?
Yes.
Taking the wife and going on vacation somewhere. No, he's there. Doesn't mean he's going to be, all rookie or anything like that, but he's doing, you're right, he's saying the right things. He's doing the right things. He's not perfect by any means, but he's taking the right track. I saw one of the interviews with him this weekend, and I got a kick out of just the way he said it. Maybe it was just me. But the question must have been, what are you doing here? And he says, I got a lot to learn. I'm only 25. What gave me the chuckle was, what's been the big story about him since he went there? He's so old.
Yeah.
Yes, he goes, I'm only 25. Right?
Maybe these things, maybe this good start that he's had doesn't happen. It probably doesn't happen if he's not that old. There are positives that come from being older too.
Yes, yeah. And he's going to be 26, I know, by the time the season starts. Right? I'm only 25. Let's stop talking about him like he's ancient, okay? Sometimes that can work good for you. So, I'm hopeful. Anybody else before we?
I would just there will be more that I'll point out over the next few weeks. Now I'll just preface. I should have prefaced with this, but these are like 10 to 12 throws. Take it with a bit of a grain of salt,
sure.
But it's just a way to put throws to names and things like that. The other two SEC guys that I took note of, Blake Shapen, still unimpressive to me. I really didn't like him last year.
Mississippi State.
Mechanics are just a little sloppy. Yeah, he's at Mississippi State. Remember, he didn't finish the season. Van Buren, who's now on LSU's team.
He started 10 games.
He started most of the season, but Blake Shapen, I don't know if he's going to start this year, but just unimpressive mechanics still to me. It maybe improved a little bit from last year. And then Gunnar Stockton threw a little bit, and I was not impressed by him. Got to effort throws a little bit. He's kind of stepping in to the deeper stuff. Just didn't really like him all that much. I thought he would be a little bit higher on my list, but Stockton, raised an eyebrow to me. It's just maybe not as promising as some of the other guys in the SEC, and he'll be asked to step up this year, even though he did it, in the playoffs a little bit. He wasn't great ultimately, but did do it in a
it's a tough spot to put him in. When Stetson Bennett was the quarterback, did they win?
They did.
Yeah, when Carson Beck was the quarterback, did they win?
They won.
Not as much.
Sometimes despite him.
Listen, Stockton is not the physical specimen that Beck is, but they like him, and they'll respond to him. I can't argue that he's not. I saw him in the playoff game. I can't argue with you that he's nowhere near as impressive physically as what Carson Beck is, but there's a lot of questions about exactly how much his teammates responded to Carson Beck and why he's at another school right now. I understand this kid's physical limitations as compared to Beck, but something tells me he's going to be all right.
Yeah.
He's going to be all right. We're here at the Queen Casino in downtown Baton Rouge, live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
With Otten Hanny from the Queen Casino on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And return here at the Queen, live at lunch, watching a little Wimbledon here. Grab a little lunch as soon as we're finished with the show. Invite you to come on out here. It's a holiday week here at the Queen. Trade in the NFL today between the Steelers and the Dolphins. The Dolphins have sent Jalen Ramsey, their disgruntled all-pro cornerback, and Jonnu Smith to the Steelers in exchange for Minkah Fitzpatrick and a pick swap between the 5th and 7th rounds. So I got all kinds of thoughts about this trade. First of all, the Dolphins have been trying to move Jalen Ramsey for quite some time. Contract dispute, just not seeing eye to eye. They had to move. Fitzpatrick is going back to the Dolphins, where he was originally drafted back in 2018. And if you remember, when they traded Minkah Fitzpatrick right after they traded Laramie Tunsil, they were tanking. They were trying to tank for Tua, except the coach was a little bit too good, and they ended up winning. And Fitzmagic ended up quarterback, and then they ended up being better. I never understood why the Dolphins traded Minkah Fitzpatrick. I love him as a player. Okay, now you're talking about somebody who went to Alabama, right? Okay, and I'm not wild about Alabama, but I like Minkah Fitzpatrick as a player, and he's been great. He's a 3-time All-Pro with the Steelers. He's still only 28 years old. I never understood why they traded him in the first place. So he's going back. And in Jonnu Smith, going back there, last year, Jonnu Smith had 88 catches for 884 yards, and he went to the Pro Bowl for the first time. He's going back to reunite with his old buddy Arthur Smith, who was a coach when he was with the Falcons. Arthur Smith thinks, at least from outward perceptions, thinks that Jonnu Smith is the greatest football player that has ever put on a pair of cleats. Because when he was in Atlanta, they force-fed him the ball at the expense of Kyle Pitts, who was the top 5 pick out of Florida. And they're like, why didn't Pitts get the ball? I was like, well, because Arthur Smith loves Jonnu Smith. Well, he finally got him to go to Pittsburgh. So this is one of those coveted and not coveted trades. All good players. Fitzpatrick, who never should have been traded from Miami in the first place and got to Pittsburgh and was terrific there. Jonnu Smith, who the offensive coordinator covets. And Jalen Ramsey, who's a fine player, but didn't want to play in Miami anymore.
I feel like these type of trades don't really happen in the NFL very often. I mean,
value for value, not without draft picks. Usually that's.
And there was like a 2027 fifth rounder.
Yeah, it wasn't the meat and potatoes of the trade.
Yeah, that's just kind of there. I'm glad you mentioned the Jonnu Smith part of it, because I think people might overlook that. He's coming off that career year, like you mentioned, the Pro Bowl year. Was targeted 111 times. I mean, he was a big part of the Miami offense, and you mentioned Arthur Smith has worked with him before. So, yeah, I think that's certainly a big part of this. Ramsey, maybe has regressed, the last couple of years from his peak, in the Rams, but he's still a good corner. There's been talk about maybe shifting him to safety in some capacity at times, just because he's lost maybe some of his physical ability that he had at his peak. Minkah Fitzpatrick, kind of the same. I feel like some people in Pittsburgh kind of feel like he's gone backwards over the last couple of years, but that happens. I think they're still both good players.
2 years ago, he had a season where he was injured pretty much the whole year.
Right, and that affected him. I think PFF had him listed as sort of above average, but nothing more than that type of safety. And Ramsey's a good player, but he just you got to deal with a little bit off the field, and Pittsburgh has dealt with that. I mean, that's the one thing that you got to give Mike Tomlin credit for. Look at the players that have come in and out of this organization that have ended up, once they left the organization, becoming a huge headache. He clearly is able to rein in these players as best they can. George Pickens has been a little bit of a problem for them, but ultimately,
so they moved him.
Yeah, they ended up moving him. So Ramsey, I'm not going to say he's a real problem. I'm not saying he's a headache like maybe some of those players, Deontay Johnson and others.
He's
Antonio
not
Brown,
on Antonio Brown. He's not on that
level. He's not that.
No.
There's a contract dispute, and at times there's been some problems. I think he was it him that got in a fight maybe once in practice with somebody. That happens, fights or whatever. But I think that was a little bit more notable. Anyway, I think Ramsey is a fine player, and I think the Jonnu Smith angle of this is actually going to be a little bit more important for Pittsburgh than maybe the key names on defense are.
Fantasy football players, take note. Arthur Smith loves this guy. Loves this guy like Garfield loves lasagna, okay? If Aaron Rodgers likes him at all, he's going to put up some numbers.
2 tight ends. I'm sure Freiermuth's still there. I mean, that's a big part of their offense. They love them. They love him there in Pittsburgh. They love to yell Muth or whatever. It sounds like they're booing. It's kind of interesting to hear Freiermuth become a household sort of push, a fan favorite. But anyway,
the offensive coordinator loves this guy.
Two tight end sets. Watch out for that. Rodgers maybe lacks a little bit of the arm strength he once had, so he'll have a couple of big tight ends in the middle of the field to throw through this season.
All right, so that's the trade in the NFL. We'll take our final break here, come back and wrap things up. We are at the Queen Casino downtown Baton Rouge, live at lunch, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
With Otten Hanny from the Queen Casino on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
And today's show is also brought to you by Total Maintenance, your one-stop sales and service shop for AC and heating, generators, electricity, and plumbing. So nobody's got to go to sleep hot. Service today, every day. That's been a slogan since 1980. One of South Louisiana's largest and longest-standing AC and heating companies, both in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. The electrical and plumbing needs, plus they are an authorized dealer for Carrier, American Standard, Daykin, and Ream AC units, Generac and Cummings generators. Baton Rouge, call 480-1000. In New Orleans, 841-3300. Service today, every day at Total Maintenance. It's a really disturbing story that came out of BYU involving Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback there, who was accused of rape and strangling and biting a woman back in November of 2023. He was never charged with a criminal act, but he was facing a civil suit and was also going to get not kicked out of BYU, but he was facing a 7-game suspension for violating the school's honor code because he admitted that the sex was consensual. At BYU, premarital sex is a violation of the honor code, and he was facing a long suspension. As long as his case was pending, Retzlaff was going to, I would say he was going to have a hard time getting any interest, but the suit has been withdrawn. The woman withdrew the suit this morning that has ended the case, and so Retzlaff is now essentially a free agent. He's not facing a suspension anywhere but at BYU, and there's no criminal charges against him. Max, if you're Tennessee, do you make a call?
I think you could. Absolutely. It's a little late in the process, but Yeah, he's not going back to BYU at this point. He would have a 7-game suspension at least. We've seen this before at BYU. Brandon Davies, the most notable, basketball
player. That was a really good team, right? They were
27-2 at the time.
Yeah,
they're ranked number 3 in the nation.
I remember that. Restless numbers that were pretty pedestrian last year. He threw for 3,000 yards, just under 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 58%. So nothing that is going to jump off the page at you, but he does have some starting experience. And Tennessee did get kind of caught hold in the bag with Nico
Iamaleava.
Thank you. Nice at UCLA. I don't have to learn how to say it anymore. We're done playing UCLA. But we'll see if he ends up or where he ends up. But the charges against him have been dropped out at BYU.
One other update from Adam Schefter. We just talked about the Steelers, but there's been some speculation about T.J. Watt. He skipped to the most recent minicamp. There's a contractual issue there, and Adam Schefter's reporting that there's some outside team interest considering the trade today. So maybe we'll see another big move from Pittsburgh.
How in the hell could you bring in Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year contract and then trade T.J. Watt? I'm serious.
That's a great question.
If you are going to say, listen, we're going to try this 1-year thing. They made the playoffs last year with what at quarterback? Not even a diminished Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So you say, okay, it's a gamble. I wouldn't, but I understand the argument, okay? We're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers for 1 year. We'll deal with our long-term quarterback situation next year, but we're going to go in there. We're going to try to win this year. We won a division last year. We made the playoffs last year. We feel like we got Aaron Rodgers and put some people around him. We can do that. So the next thing you do can't be. Now, you just made a trade in which you're bringing in 2 players for 1, okay? A good corner and a good tight end for a good safety. So you're adding to your counter. You can't do all that and then trade T.J. Watt, can you?
Reminds me of the Pelicans a little bit. The alignment. Are we in on this year? Or are we in for the long term? What are we doing here?
That's kind of the idea.
Seems like they're kind of going in on this year, right? They make a move for Ramsey and for Smith, and they've got Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal. Aren't you trying to make this year, be one that you compete in the AFC North? It's a very tough division, but yeah, it seems contrary to what everything else they've done this offseason would suggest.
What is the deal with extremely productive, valuable pass rushers not being? I mean, this is a premium position in NFL. We're not talking about offensive guards or inside linebackers. Trey Hendrickson and T.J. Watt are among the 2 of the, let's say, 4 or 5 best pass rushers. Max Crosby, obviously Myles Garrett, and Hutchinson if he's healthy. Okay, these guys are as good or better.
And the Eagles won with the line of scrimmage. They won a Super Bowl with great defensive linemen.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody for participating today. Tomorrow we are at Mike Anderson Seafood, Wesley at Nicholson. Thanks to our friends here at the Queen for hosting us today. For Max, Jordan back in the studio, I'm Charles Hanniger saying thank you and good afternoon. Stay tuned for Hunt Palmer on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.